Hi, I'm Luann Worley with Rockin Book Reviews, and I'm so pleased today to have author and film director Nathan Smith Jones. Uh, Tell us a little bit about yourself, namely where you grew up, how many siblings, and fun activities you used to do, and so forth.
Yeah, I grew up in Mesa, Arizona. Grew up actually all over the Western U.S., and I'm a triplet. I got two brothers my same age. Weird, I know. They both live in Arizona still, and I just happened to come up here, and I just ended up staying. And my wife and I, we have four kids in the house, and we live right here in Provo, about 40 miles south of Salt Lake. And and I'm a teacher.
What fun things did you do as a youth that you really enjoyed doing?
I loved movies, and I got into books. Sadly, I didn't get into books until like late high school. That's when I really caught the fire, right? And
at least you did it.
right. Many people don't, right? They never do, right? So, yeah, no, but I was a typical teen. Loved getting into trouble, harmless trouble. You know what I mean? Like oranging cars was a big deal back then.
Toilet papering,
right? Stuff like that. Yeah. Kind of low level stuff. Nothing too. In fact, the wild days of my youth were rather tame compared to everyone else that I really knew, even. So, yeah.
So, you said you stated that you wrote Dragonkyn for your kids, but that you also wrote it for the kids at the Renaissance Academy and the Freedom Academies. Most of us aren't familiar. Can you tell us a little about them and what you do?
Yeah, well, I've been an English teacher for 14 years, and a lot of my students would put in their input, and they would tell me about. I would give them excerpts, and they would tell me if they liked it or not, and they were just a big help. They knew I was writing it. I took 3 years to write it and get it out there, and so I really kind of dedicated to them, not only my own kids, but my adopted, sort of quote unquote adopted kids being my students.
So is the academy like a private school?
It's a charter. In Utah, 99% of all the charters in the state of Utah are public. So they're basically, you can go to a typical school or a private school or a charter school. But the charter schools they have a board and everything like that, but they're kind of its own district unto itself. Does that make sense? Every single school. And there's quite a few of them now actually in Utah, public charter schools anyway. And so
it's a new concept to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. And where are you?
I'm in Fairview, Utah.
Oh, Fairview. Oh, cool.
By Manti.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's fun. Okay, that's great.
But also, what was your motivation? What asked to make you aspire to be a writer and a director and all the things you do?
It's funny because I grew up loving movies too, and so it seems like I would make a movie, and then I would get so angry and frustrated at that process. So much is out of your control, dealing with other producers, things like that. That I would get all mad, and I would want to have a bit more creative control, and I would go write a book, and then and then like 10 years later, I'd try a movie again, and then and so. But there's an old saying that they say poetry chooses you, and I can't remember who said it, but I really like it, and I think that is the case. Once you catch that bug, you just have to tell stories, and so if you are, if you're not doing it, if it's not happening, with making a movie, And if you don't have the funds or the resources to be able to make movie after movie, well, you do what you can. You make a video, or you write a book, or you make a Vine, or whatever, you know what I mean, or a short video, I guess. And so I guess that was really, I was just kind of bitten by that bug, the thrill of creating characters and a story that maybe means something to people, and kind of, give that catharsis, right, that we all kind of seek after when we and it's kind of like, it's like, you ever seen Shadowlands? When C.S. Lewis is there, and the woman who is the love interest, played by Deborah Winger, he asks him, I'm not sure if you want to be the author, the caster of spells, or if you really want to be the child caught in a spell. And I thought that was really neat, and that kind of sums me up. I love it all. I love to be caught in the spell of a great story, and I do think it's just, storytelling is just, I don't know, it's innate to us. We're hardwired to learn through stories, et cetera, et cetera.
So someone who didn't catch the reading bug till late in high school,
right?
What was the evolution into your interest in English and everything?
Well, it's funny. It really did start with movies. I think there was a moment when I realized movies were written. And I think it was like in that moment in Indiana Jones when the guy with the big sword is swinging it around, and Indiana Jones just goes like, I don't want to deal with this. And he just shoots the guy. And it
classic.
Occurred to me. I just thought that was written. I mean, that was the first time I realized, because it just seems so, like, wow, someone came up with that idea to go against the grain of the typical moment in a movie, of a typical fight scene, and it ends so abruptly. And I was just fascinated. I mean, granted, my brother and I, like, we were actually two fraternal twins that split. My brother Neil had his own egg. What do you do? And my brother Norm and I were always, Neil was the jock, and Norm and I were always just these, I don't know, I guess you could call it communication geeks, because we loved it all. We just loved the process of like, how do people do that? How do you make that? How do you write that? How does one go about thinking up a story like that? And we were, everything from, Robert Jordan to, some, of course, Tolkien, right? And his imagination was just so vast that, you just think, gosh, I'd love to try doing that. That'd be great. So.
Okay, that piqued my interest. I only know one other set of triplets. What was it like being a triplet?
It's funny because I used to, when I was a smart aleck, in high school, I used to always say, it's like having two extra enemies just on hand. Whenever you want one, they're there. But it really is two extra friends. I mean, they've really become, we've all really become close. We really value each other, especially as the years have gone by. So.
Well, it's always that odd number syndrome. You get 3 or 5 and somebody's always left out. Did you ever feel left out?
Well, it's funny because I call myself a meta middle child because I'm the middle triplet in the middle of 5 sisters. So I'm the 4th of 8. And so it's almost like, gee, so you became an actor and a writer and, like psychology 101, right? Like middle child syndrome, right? But that was I never really had my own birthday cake. Sadly, it was all of our names on there, and then I became too old maybe for a birthday cake. I don't know, Doesn't
your wife fix you one now?
She's from Russia, right? So
okay.
Cakes are not her thing, but she does make other things. Other Russian desserts.
I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. The dragon theme has really died out through the years, but from a lot of readers I'm getting and a lot of requests, I know that there is an audience that really wants the dragon theme to come back. Why did you go with the dragon theme?
Well, it's funny because I remember, a lot of times Stephen King said that an author is either a he's either a gardener or he's an architect. And I'm kind of like Brandon Sanderson. I'm more of an architect, and I like to plan out my plots, and then as I'm writing, if I'm surprised, then I go in that direction and I just kind of explore that. But I do think there's an element of just exploration where you're just kind of like in the sandbox of your own imagination, and you're just kind of thinking of things. And I remember doing a little bit of research, and I remember thinking, gosh, has there ever really been a well-made story about dragon children, or something like that? And I found, at least the ones that I had found, I hadn't discovered the Talon series. I think that's a pretty good series, but I just noticed that they were either not well written or they weren't really well thought out. If they were written, they weren't really well thought out. And so I wanted to kind of provide that. I wanted to give a because I've noticed that besides The Hobbit, there really isn't a dragon themed story that's big like a Harry Potter or a Maze Runner thing. And so I thought, oh gosh, maybe my love of pop culture and sci-fi and urban fantasy, can provide that. So even though my book is a little on the short side, only 243 pages, it's a ripping yarn and it's fun. And so,
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you.
I read and reviewed Dragonkyn before it was the new edition. So
right.
What is the difference between the one I read and the new edition?
Well, like there are several scenes that are either just boosted in terms of sensory description, or there's a little moment that I add to the Pantsing the Policeman chapter when they get back from the lair, and he meets, and I won't say exactly how, but he meets this in his own hometown. He meets a Welsh American Dragonkyn, and he and his sister and Mark are the only Dragonkyn in the entire town. And this guy Jeff Davis, he makes a little he plays a little trick on Mark, and it's kind of fun. And so it's stuff like that. And there's a couple of little moments also that improve a scene, and I changed. But overall, it is the same story. But I
was going to say, you better not have changed it very much, because I loved it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no. The basics are definitely there. Yeah.
Oh, good.
But like, for instance, toward the end, like that climactic scene, I added some more detail to that to kind of boost it up, so people can just kind of steep themselves in the story. And a lot of my training is admittedly with screenplays, and so I do think some scenes went too fast. And so, but yeah, and I hired a lady who is also a blogger, and she's read thousands of young adult novels, and we went through it line by line, and it was really, really a great experience. And I am proud to report that it is the same story. You still have all the great stuff in there, but I think it's just simply improved for the bibliophiles that they want to be steeped in a story more, and so it is. And I also, I made the font one size bigger, so that it would be a little bit more. Just the reading experience would be better, and yeah. And so yeah, that was, and it was really a neat experience doing that. And so now I'm just very, very happy with it, and I'm working on book 2. And so
I was going to say it ended so that it would be okay as a standalone, but I was thinking it's also open for a series, and I was hoping you would say that.
Thank you. Yeah. It's going to be a series, and I'm there are like 2 or 3 things, like the Black Dragon in the dream. Who is he, and where does this all fit, and why is there this weird relationship with he and Victor? And that all that gets answered in the second book, and it really amps up for the third book. And I get the feeling that the third book will be probably, thicker. The second and third books will probably be thicker than this one. Yeah. And maybe I wanted this one to simply cast the spell. So
now, are you going to make a film out of this one?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to, because I did structure it somewhat like a film. And you probably noticed
yes,
that.
Easily.
And it's great. And it's great also that, because they are different mediums. And I'm glad, a couple people, a couple of my students that are just really into reading, they really loved it, but they said it was a little too short. And I'm like,
yes.
That's true, but I'd rather someone say, gosh, it was too short, it was great, than
I was going to say it was short, but it left the reader wanting more.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And I really, that's the key, is to cast the spell. And so now that the spell is cast, I think I'll be more comfortable, writing something 300 pages plus, right? So
if you make this into a film, when do you expect it might start?
It's funny, because I think it'll probably happen when either when there's just critical mass, like when there's just such a demand for the actual story. Oh, here's a fun tidbit that is in your blog. This video is one of the only places that I'm saying it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So it's I am about halfway through the audiobook.
Good.
And yes, and so I've been a voiceover actor for 21 years, and so I wanted to bring that to bear on the story, and it's really coming along great. I'm really excited about it, because I really think it's going to open up the audience even more, because a lot of people, there's a huge host of people that only read audiobooks. They really don't just sit and read a book online or anywhere else.
I got some grandsons that way.
Yeah, I have a couple of kids that way too.
They say, I'll review for you, Grandma, if you'll do an audio.
Right, there you go. Yeah, and so I think it will just open up the market, really, to a completely new market. So hopefully, and then it'll kind of cross promote each other, the book and the audiobook. And then I think once it's in those two mediums, then I think it'll just get, I'm hoping that the sales will go even bigger, and it'll have even a deeper reach, and people will start discovering it. And so, but I'm hoping. I mean, it would be great if someone's talking to me about a movie version before books 2 and 3 come out. But I do think it'll be probably right after books 2 and 3 are out. So
sometimes even all your series, like, what do you call her? I can't even think of her name, but she's one of my favorite actors. The vampire series.
Oh, right. Stephanie Myers. Yeah.
There.
Yes. Yeah. The Twilight.
But anyhow, she didn't get really hit up until hers was about almost done. So.
That's right. Yeah. It was almost like, what was it, book 4 or 5 before she got, it was becoming such a phenomenon that.
You know how pathetic I am? I read that whole series 9 times.
Really? My sister saw those films like 30 times. I swear. I'm like, wow, what is that about, Sharon? And
I was disappointed in the films because they left too much. You just can't ever put what's in a book in a film.
So true. Yeah. Especially a book that's a good size book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's funny because I was teaching a writing class, and we analyzed the very first page of the very first Twilight. And it was kind of genius when you think about it, because that first page, the attitude that she has, like, oh, my poor harebrained mother. And it's really like, probably I look at it as like a teenage girl's absolute fantasy, like, oh, mom's crazy and she's just, what would she do without me? As if the girl is already an adult taking care of her mother. What would she do without me? And so I just thought that was kind of genius to kind of pull in a kid who dreams of kind of, being more in control and mom taking a back seat. And, I thought that was fascinating. So.
Yeah, the acting was good. I just, it just cut out so much of the book that.
Right.
It's like Gone with the Wind. If you've read the book and then you see the movie, it's not quite the same.
Not at all, right? Yeah, exactly.
But anyhow, so you're just primarily now working on your book two?
Right. So like for maybe for those viewers that are new to it, Dragonkyn, of course, is about Mark. He's 14 and he discovers that he carries ancient dragon DNA. Very, very fun. And so book two will kind of further the adventure. It'll really be about Mark and Alex and Jen. But there are some things that happen. Here's one hint. Are dragons really extinct? And that's going to come up in book two. And it's kind of exciting because, in book one, the only dragons were like, again, in his dreams, right? But book two, something might happen here. So that's kind of exciting.
I think it's so good when you make it so fantasy becomes reality. So are you going to make it a trilogy, or would you like an ongoing series? What would you?
Yeah, right now it's 3 books, but it may end up ballooning to 5, depending on how, again, like one's imagination can sometimes really take off, and it's kind of, or you might get stuck and you might be like, oh, you put so much emphasis on the specific storytelling and you want it to be great, and maybe, so maybe I'll have, and I don't think a lot of authors do this enough. I'd rather have 6 books that are I'd rather have 3 books that are absolutely amazing than 6 books that are like, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, because I just think that it's the law of diminishing returns. And so I just think if you do make a book 2 and a 3 that are just outstanding, I think that carries far more weight than, I'm getting paid by the word here and I'm just pumping out these door stoppers, just to,
and the reader can feel it.
Yes, that's exactly right. The reader can feel it. And that's, and that's why readers like you that got so excited about the book and supported it so early on, just thank you again. Because seriously, because, it's hard. It's like, what is it? Like 250,000 books are published every single year. It'd be like Coke and Pepsi trying to come up with, 250,000 products to compete with every single year. It's just hard to get anything out there and to get people to be excited about it and connect and engage with it. But I just love it. It's just so fun.
I never realized when I was reading all those books how authors depend on reviews.
Oh, yes. Yes. And that's why, and so thank you again for yours in Amazon, because that, it really is seriously like every one of those 56 Amazon reviews, it's hard to get over 50. It's hard to get 30 when it's independently done. I mean, Cedar Fort picked it up for publication here in Springville, but I bought the rights back in August, and I republished it under my own little brand.
Okay.
So, but I think it's good. I think it was a good thing. They didn't really handle fantasy, let alone urban fantasy, so they really didn't really know what to do with it. All they knew is that they liked having something to compete with Brandon Mull's Dragon Watch with Desert Book, because they're direct competitors. And so it's like, well, all right, but and again, speaking of great guys, I mean, Brandon Mull is just a sweetheart of a guy. I just think the world of that guy. I got to know him. I wrote a children's book called The Boy Who Ate America in 2007.
That's what I was going to ask you about next, because this is not your first book.
Right, yeah. I did have The Boy Who Ate America, so that's kind of exciting. And yeah.
What was it about?
The Boy Who Ate America is it's a children's story. It's about a boy who eats the entire country. And what I noticed is that I looked around and I noticed that really great metaphors often don't have a home in a story. And I looked at, man shall not live by bread alone. And I looked at that, kind of that gospel principle. And I thought, I want I want to make something that is for kids and adults, kind of a Pixar version of, something that can be enjoyed by ages 5 to 95, but it would also have a really neat message to it. And of course, as soon as the kid eats the entire country, he realizes his folly. He realizes that there are different kinds of hunger and that our soul needs food too. It's a neat little message. It's a really, really neat message. So
yeah, that's one thing that was real impressive with Dragonkyn, because it's a book that the whole family can enjoy.
Yeah. And there was only one person who thought it was too violent, and for her 10-year-old. And I thought, well, okay, but in
this day's world, I get. Okay, I'm a conservative site, but I know what you're saying with like publishing, because I get bombarded every day with books, and I tell them I want like no bad language, no whatever, and you ought to see some of the things I get sent.
Oh,
I can only imagine. If this is conservative.
I can only imagine, seriously. No, and I think there's enough out there, especially in young adult. That's just it's crowded with so many F-bombs and you get
and extreme graphic violence.
Right.
And I thought, no wonder we have such a violent world, because
and it's almost to the point where it celebrates it. And yeah, a friend of mine told me that the violence in Dragonkyn was surprising, but he said, yeah, it's not gratuitous, it's not celebratory, it's simply what is.
It was really mild to most things I've read.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. And
yet it wasn't so mild that it sounded, sappy or.
Right. And of course, the book has no swearing, no sex. Yeah. I had to give them something, right?
So it's perfectly good for children and my grandchildren, but yet it was not one of my daughters says, well, the only thing with books without language and that is they don't seem real, but it was very real without using all that garbage. So.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because there are a couple other little hints at things that were like, they might wink at something that might be, into kind of PG-13 territory, but it never said it explicitly.
Exactly.
Like it would say something like, oh, Mark swore under his breath, but it didn't say what he said. Does that make sense? Right. So it keeps it real without keeping it too real.
And I appreciate that as a mother and a grandmother.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And that's actually another reason why I'm very happy that, 4th, 5th, 6th graders are getting into the book. And that's exciting because, I definitely wrote it for, the reluctant reader that, because sometimes writers write for other writers. They don't write for readers, and they don't keep the plot moving. They just think, oh, yeah. But I think it's so presumptuous to say, yes, people have all the time in the world to wade through 500 pages of this happening and then that happening when there's really no focus to it. Does that make sense? So, yeah. And so, but I also want to be sensitive to the fact that, a lot of readers, they just love to read and be lost in a story. And so if you can hold people for 500 pages, great.
You do a very good job at that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so maybe
literally, I did not put that back. I stopped for, I think, half hour to eat, and then I went back and finished.
That is so great. That is such great.
Anyhow, that was it. I am looking forward to many more books from you.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have any other aspirations besides your Dragonkyn when you get through that?
What's funny? Right now, I'm going to put out a little ebook, and I may put them out like 10,000 words at a time. But because books 2 and 3 may take a while, because I've got so much on my plate, I've got this new book about a 19-year-old woman named Ilona. And she's a Russian-American Dragonkyn. And she lives in Virginia.
Did your wife inspire that?
She did, actually, yes. My stepdaughter did. And
okay.
And it's called a Dragonkyn story. And it's a whole new story that maybe this character will end up in book 3 of Dragonkyn. So who knows? I mean, and I have the basic plot all kind of outlined. And now it's just about getting to know the character and and just kind of, I think writing is about surprising yourself. And if you're not surprising yourself, and if you're bored, then the reader's going to be bored, and so I think that's really important. So so look for that, because that little novella, mini novella, is probably going to come out in the next couple months, I'm hoping, and that'll be and it might just be exclusive to Amazon. I'm open to getting it out as an EPUB as well, so that iBook and Nook can grab it too. But it probably will just be an ebook for the time being. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. Thanks. And there's another book that I wrote half of it, and I'm really proud of it. And it's called Chronotica, and it's a time travel series. And so we'll see if I can get back to that. That'd be fun. But I'm in the middle.
I know there's a lot of readers like I am that are getting tired of so many sci-fi, Star Wars, futuristic type dystopian. It's just kind of fun to get back to the fantasy and a lighter reading. And that's one thing I like about Dragonkyn, is because it's the fantasy without the kill and never be killed type of.
Right. It's not this. Yeah, it doesn't have all those obvious tropes that often get repeated. That's another thing that I was really conscious about. Like, in a world of just, you can't swing a dead cat and not hit a dystopian future, story. I really wanted to go in a different direction than that. And yes, Chronotica is that, but that's one of the reasons why I just kind of left it alone for a while, because I thought, man, these are everywhere. Trying to be the next Hunger Games or whatever. Yeah.
So the only problem with that is if you get too many, you get lost in the.
Oh, exactly. Lost in the shuffle. And if you don't have something truly unique, and that's why I thought Dragonkyn was really unique, because I knew there wasn't anything out there that wasn't, again, like 2 inches thick, or wasn't just good and solid and had a good pace to it, and was actually, well thought out. So
I have had several of my readers contact me and ask why I don't do more dragon reviews, and I thought, I really don't get contacted with that many people who write about dragons anymore. So,
and that's what's so sad, because I just think there's so much mystique about them, especially like it says in the novel, that especially Western civilization has vilified and set up as heroic dragons. Like Victor says, the world really, they don't know what to think about dragons, because have you slayed your dragon? And yet, fight like a dragon. And, so like, are they good? Are they evil? I found that very, very interesting to those themes to play with, as far as identity and Mark's journey into realizing, who he is, and how he goes from Mondragon to Mondragon, and gets him more in touch with so it's there is an Elijah kind of a feel to it, because it is about dragon ancestors.
Right.
So yeah,
I loved it.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any final thing you'd like to say to our audience before we close?
Gosh, just thank you for checking the book out. Please spread the word if you like it. If you hate it, do nothing.
We don't need the negative reviews.
Exactly. No, but if you like it at all, please spread the word, because it'll help me get the second book out faster. That's for sure.
And Nathan is offering a print copy to the U.S. Canada audience, and an ebook copy for the international, for the lucky winner of this interview contest.
Cool.
And we want to wish everybody happy reading, and to study the world through the universe through reading. And goodbye for now.